Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome back to the GM. It is your guy, Boulanger. Up next on the GM Collision Course Part 2. Do me a quick favor, hit like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so that you get updates when we upload new content. Let's talk about it. Back in the conversation about a collision course, and let me just outright set the framework for what I'm speaking of. When I talk about a collision course, I'm talking about the Ravens' old school wait and see mentality when it comes to building in free agency versus a more aggressive, innovative approach to building in free agency. Now, am I saying that the Baltimore Ravens should go out and sign every good free agent? Certainly not. That's not possible, right? But I am talking about, you know what? Being more aggressive, right? Everything we do in free agency for the last 6 seasons, especially when it comes to the offensive side of the ball, has been a slow, methodical move. And I'm not sure if it pays off this year, right? I'm not sure if that slow, methodical, old school mentality pays off this season. Somebody said to me, and I appreciate his commentary for sure. He said, you respond like a fan of a team who's been a loser. Well, I can see what he's saying, but how I'm responding right now is a fan of a team who needed to have gone all in this season. You see, I've had several people point out that we were just in the AFC Championship. I have several people point out that we were very, very close, right? And I do agree with the difference of about 4 to 5 plays in the AFC Championship. We definitely would have found ourselves in the Super Bowl. But a lot of major pieces from that team are no longer a part of the Baltimore Ravens. And we should have taken a more aggressive approach to fill in holes or at least upgrade positions that could have propelled us specifically offensively to the next level, right? See, because if we're honest, when we look at the offensive side of the ball, it has been a Lamar Jackson led, carrying it all type of offense. I'm not saying he's done it all by himself. You know, somebody had to be on the other end of the passes. Somebody had to be on the other end of a handoff. But when you've been, you know, the leading passer, of course, and the leading rusher for the last 5 years, right? And it may be even six. I'm not sure who led the Baltimore Ravens in 2018. That means, you know what? Let's upgrade at some positions so that the load is not so heavy, where Lamar has to be the hero, the end all be all playmaker in order to get us to victory, right? Because we've seen that approach offensively come up short multiple seasons. His 2 MVP seasons, he carried the offense, right? People tell me all the time, well, Lamar Jackson has one of the highest points per game average when he's healthy. Agreed. Agreed. But that's just him doing most of the heavy lifting. What would the offense look like? What would the PPG be if he had a go-to guy on the perimeter? What would the PPG be if he had an elite level talent at the running back position? Now you have upgraded the running back position to an elite level. I think Derrick Henry was a great signing. I think that he's going to be an integral part of this offense. I think he'll take some burden off of Lamar Jackson. But look at the perimeter, the other part of the perimeter, right? All you have is a second year Zay Flowers that you can depend on right now to be a playmaker, right? Every other person on this roster had 400 yards receiving or less, right? And so we've sat still in free agency. Granted, okay, I'll give them this. All of the top wide receivers were basically off the board before free agency really began. Okay? But here's the truth. That's more of a reason to be aggressive. That's more of a reason to go out and get somebody. And so here we are with third and fourth tier wide receivers that we're bringing in. When I say third and fourth tier, I'm talking about guys who will play a third receiver role or a fourth receiver role on this team. I understand that they're going to give Rashad Bateman every opportunity to be a go-to guy. But this ain't that year. This was not the year. This is not the off season to say, oh, now we're going to wait on Bateman or depend on Bateman to be the go-to guy. This was not that you don't get to the AFC Championship and then say, oh, we're going to wait on a guy who has not produced a whole lot, whether injury or connection. That this was not that off season to do that. But the reason why we find ourselves doing that is because we have that old school wait and see approach. You see, the truth is this. For those people who say that Lamar Jackson has enough, he just has to get it done, part of that I would agree with. He has to get it done. But the other part I absolutely disagree with, that he has enough. See, because nobody says that. Nobody says that about all the other franchise quarterbacks. Nobody says Josh Allen has enough. You never heard that conversation. Nobody says Joe Burrow has enough. Nobody says Trevor Lawrence has enough. Nobody says Justin Herbert has enough. Nobody said Jalen Hurts had enough. Nobody says Dak Prescott has enough. Nobody says that. Nobody. Nobody said Tua had enough. Well, and I'm not saying that Tua is elite, but he's been good. Nobody says that. What you actually see is their teams go out, whether free agency or in a trade, and continue to add pieces to help out who? The franchise quarterback. And that's what I'm saying. When you look at what the Ravens have done at wide receiver, okay? And this has not been only a wide receiver conversation, whether it was part one of this or part two of this. But what I'm saying is, why can't Lamar get a number one? Does he not deserve a number one? Because he's so dynamic with his legs, does he not deserve a number one? Because he's been winning without a number one, does he not need one? See, because that's the narrative that's been pushed, is that because they've been winning, he has enough. Well, I tell you what you do. I tell you what you do. You go tell those other guys. You go tell Dak Prescott get rid of C.D. Lamb. Tell Jerry Jones trade C.D. Lamb and see what Dak looks like without him. You go tell Buffalo to get rid of Stephon Diggs, and they might, they might. But you go tell them to get rid of Stephon Diggs, no matter what he looked like this past season, and see what Josh Allen looks like without him. You go get rid of Jamar Chase and see what Joe Burrow looks like without him. Tell Philadelphia to get rid of AJ Brown and see what Jalen Hurts looks like without him. Hey, even go to Cleveland. Tell Cleveland, hey, y'all got Jerry Judy now. Move on from Amari Cooper and see whatever the quarterback is, whoever the quarterback is, see what they look like without him. See, because that's what you're really saying for Lamar Jackson. See, that's what you're really saying. Tell Tua to have Miami trade away Tyreek Hill and see what he looks like without him. See, because that's the scenario when it comes to Lamar Jackson. You have enough. You don't need a number one. Hmm? Hmm? How come we can't have the best of both worlds? Right? But that's how we've dug in to every free agency. That's how we approached every free agency when it came to adding weapons to help out the franchise quarterback. And then we had the audacity to pay him $260 million, but still not add a number one wide receiver. That makes no sense. In fact, all these other guys that I mentioned, they all had number ones before they got paid. Lamar has gotten paid and they still didn't add a number one. Does it make sense to me? And if you really think about it, it doesn't make sense to you. When you go and look at the free agent wide receivers they brought to Lamar Jackson, it's been the equivalent of the wide receiving group that he won the MVP with. His first MVP, Seth Roberts and Willie Snead, because that's the level of wide receiver they brought every year. Granted, I know that they've been interviewing, visiting with some wide receivers this offseason. I know they supposed to had met with Reynolds, and they supposed to had met with what's that dude's name? Michael Gallup. But what? What were those guys on their own teams? They were threes at best. Threes at best. But this is what you continue to bring to Lamar Jackson. Well, let's bring him a three. Let's bring him a level three wide receiver and hope that he fills in the gaps. And I know, let's go ahead and deal with Odell and say we'll move on. I know they brought him Odell, and Odell was just the biggest name they had brought him. But if we're honest, Odell was not a number one when he came to Baltimore. In fact, Odell was not the number one uh, in LA. Cooper Cup is the number one on that team. Odell just had a breakout game in that Super Bowl. See, we got to learn how to just tell the truth about some things. Now, Odell may sign with a team and be good for that team, but I guarantee he won't be a number one. And so here we are again, still waiting to exhale when it comes to perimeter upgrades. And the fan base has just been okay with it. But let me talk about why, and then let me give you a prediction. I think the Baltimore Ravens fan base has become numb. Some of us have become numb to the idea of getting a number one wide receiver. I think some of us have become numb to the idea of upgrading with elite talent. But I'm going to tell you why. Because historically, here we go with the old school mentality again. Historically, the Baltimore Ravens have not had a lot of major investments offensively. You can definitely see the major investments defensively, but not offensively. When you look at all the trades that they've tried to pull off the last couple of years, they've all been offensive in nature. Excuse me, defensive in nature. And so what happens is because as a fan base, we starve offensively. That's the truth. We starve offensively. So when they bring us anything, right? When they bring us anything, we jump on it and eat it up, right? See, I don't know if you guys remember potted meat. Some of you guys may not be old enough to remember potted meat, but nobody knew what potted meat was, right? It came in a little can with a pop top. Nobody knew what potted meat was, but you put it on some bread. If you're in the South, put it on some bread with some mayonnaise. It made a good sandwich, right? Especially if you were hungry, especially if you didn't have resources to go out and get ribeye and filet and sirloin, right? A good old potted meat sandwich was good. That's what the Ravens keep feeding the Baltimore Raven fan base offensively. See, they'll tell us, oh, we can't afford to get these other guys because it's going to be too expensive. We don't have the money, right? We don't have the money. So let me give you this potted meat. And so, man, we'll jump on that thing and eat it up. We'll pop that can right open and eat it up. Why? Because we're starving offensively. And so what happens is we don't even expect to eat. We don't expect to get anything good on the plate offensively. So whatever they bring us, we get excited about. It's the truth. But every other team, they can become accustomed to getting some upgrades. But we starve offensively. You see, that's why the mentality was, oh man, we were able to retain Justin Metabike, but at what cost? I'm not talking about his contract. I'm not talking about his price tag. I'm talking about at what cost for the rest of the team. Let me go one step deeper since I'm on this subject. You see, the Baltimore Ravens made a trade a year and a half ago for Roquan Smith. Created a lot of excitement, buzz in Baltimore. But we understood that that was the end of Patrick Queen. And in a subsequent move, as soon as they traded for him, they got to work on building a new deal. Maxed him out, paid him $100 million. Now let's tell the truth about it. Is he a better player than Patrick Queen? Yes, but it's marginal. He's not exponentially better than Patrick Queen. He's not. They both can run and hit. They both have sideline to sideline speed. They both play a smash mouth style. Neither one are elite in pass coverage, right? They're improving. They both are improving, but neither one are elite in pass coverage. So what you do is you sacrifice draft capital, defensive move. You sacrifice draft capital, a second and a five and a first. Did you hear what I said? They sacrificed a second, a five, and a first to get Roquan. Well, Belanger didn't give up a first. Yes, they did. They gave up Patrick Queen. And the upgrade is marginal at best. See, if you think about it in reverse, what if they just leave Roquan Smith alone and go get a captain to manage the position, to play in the position that Roquan plays in? There's plenty of linebackers out there this year who could have stepped into that role. Again, they're not Roquan, but really, do we need $100 million middle linebacker? Let's go one step further. The price the Ravens paid Roquan could have actually paid Patrick Queen at a rate of $59 million less. Did you hear what I said? $59 million less. Because I think, and somebody correct me in the comment section, I think his contract was $41 million for the Steelers. So is Roquan $59 million more or worth more than Patrick Queen? I don't think so. What could they have done with that extra $59 million spread around the rest of the team? What could they have done with that $59 million upgrading the wide receiver room as we jump back to the offense side of the ball? What could they have done with that $59 million upgrading the offensive line? But see, that's the point that I'm making. They have no problem making trades and upgrading defense, but they struggle to do that offensively. You see, I'm going to give you two predictions. I believe that the Baltimore Ravens will go all wide receiver in the draft, first round. And I'm going to tell you why. They don't have another option unless they make a pre-draft trade. The first 9 wide receivers in this year's draft are plug and play day one starters, whether they're going to be a number 1 or a high level number 2. When you look at the free agency market at wide receiver, the 9 players coming in, the top 9 wide receivers are better than what's left on the free agency market. So do the Baltimore Ravens ignore wide receiver in the first round and go offensive tackle and hope that somebody falls to them at 62? Do the Baltimore Ravens ignore wide receiver at number 30 and use a second and a fourth to trade up and get another wide receiver? You see, that's the dilemma that happens when you take that wait and see approach. You see, because the Baltimore Ravens themselves have already stated that they would like to have the major holes on this team filled before the draft. But that is not going to happen this year. So that's my first prediction, that they're going to be forced to go wide receiver and hope that this offensive tackle class is deep enough for them to get a replacement for Ronnie Stanley in 2025. Another prediction, if their plan is to go offensive tackle in the first round, I'm predicting a pre-draft trade for a number 1 wide receiver. That's what I'm predicting, because it has to happen that way. There is absolutely no way you can go into the draft needing offensive line talent, but also need wide receiver talent. There is no way you're going to make me believe that they're going to totally depend on Rashad Bateman to be that number 1 go-to guy and put the Super Bowl window at risk for a guy who has not proven anything. Don't give me he was open all last season. See, because that requires having a connection, a chemistry with the quarterback. And to my knowledge, they didn't work out last offseason. They didn't really gel in preseason. And so that's why you didn't see that connection in the regular season. They may this year, but I don't know. I don't know if they'll work out together. I don't know if they'll work to develop that chemistry. In fact, if I can be honest, I think Rashad Bateman is turned off by Baltimore. You see, because it was just last season, this time of the year, where him and EDC had that public back and forth, where EDC said he wished the wide receiver group had been better, and then Rashad Bateman fires back at him, right? I think that he's done in Baltimore. I think he's checked out, and I think he needs a fresh start. Granted, I don't deny his talent. I don't deny his size, weight, speed, route running, hands. I don't deny any of that. But what I can't accept, and I don't think the Baltimore Ravens are going to totally, I don't think, let me say it this way, I don't think they can totally wait and see what he's going to be. Because if we go into the season and Rashad Bateman is expected to be that #1 wide receiver, we may be in trouble. Because there's nothing yet that says on the field in season that he is that. Here we are. Free agency is basically over. And I'm going to begin to turn the page to the draft and begin to have draft conversations. At this point, it doesn't matter who they bring in at wide receiver. I think they will sign a veteran. But I think it's going to be the equivalent of signing Nelson Aguilar last season. See, this is not me knocking who we signed. This is not me knocking the player. This is me just acknowledging that for 6 seasons, we have not had a #1. And it would be nice to see your franchise quarterback finally have that guy on the field in the clutch, along with Derrick Henry and along with Zay Flowers, along with Mark Andrews, along with Isaiah Likely, to see really what they could get done. This should have been an all-in offseason rather than the traditional wait and see. So I guess we will all wait and see what we look like in 2024. I'm Miguel Boulanger, and I'm out.